Parts of Trump's big beautiful bill are already being blocked in court. Judges are weighing in, lawsuits are underway, and key sections are facing legal challenges almost immediately. What most people don't realize is that these early court rulings could quietly change how the big beautiful bill actually works, from how programs get funded to which rules stick around. And if you rely on government benefits, or just want to know what's really changing, this matters. Stick around, because what's happening now could shape what this law actually ends up doing. Now let's start with the first real legal block, healthcare. Just a few days after President Trump signed the bill into law, a federal judge in Massachusetts stepped in and temporarily blocked one of its major provisions. This was the part of the bill that would have cut off Medicaid funding to Planned Parenthood's health centers. Now, here's what's important. This ruling didn't come after weeks of debate. It came down almost immediately. The government hadn't even responded to the lawsuit yet. The judge, an Obama appointee, issued a fast, temporary injunction, stopping the funding cuts in their tracks, at least for now. A full hearing is scheduled for July 21st, where the judge will decide whether to extend the pause or let the cuts go through. So for the moment, Medicaid funding continues. But that could change depending on what happens in that hearing. If you rely on Medicaid, or if you know someone who does, this matters. Planned Parenthood isn't just about one type of care. In many communities, especially rural areas, it's one of the few places people can go for affordable services like cancer screenings, blood pressure checks, diabetes monitoring, and general wellness exams. These aren't just services for young people. Seniors and older adults use them too, particularly if they live in areas with limited access to hospitals or primary care doctors. And this isn't the first time Medicaid funding to Planned Parenthood has been on the chopping block. It's been a political flashpoint for years. But the reason it's different now is because this time, the cuts were baked into a broader law, not a standalone proposal. They made it harder to separate politically, but easier to challenge in court, especially if the cuts look like they violate established healthcare access laws. Now, the ruling also sparked a lot of backlash. Some conservatives say it's an example of judicial overreach. Senator Mike Lee even suggested the House should consider impeaching the judge. Others argue this is exactly what the courts are supposed to do: step in when a new law threatens to create harm without warning. And if you're wondering what to do if these cuts go through, well, it helps to stay in touch with your local clinics. Many of them will post notices or update their hours if funding changes. If you're a caregiver or you help someone with transportation or medical paperwork, it may be worth asking ahead of time whether their provider could be impacted. And while that healthcare ruling made headlines, another section of the bill quietly set off alarm bells in a completely different area. This next part, it's what's stirring up a lot of attention in the gun policy world. Gun rights groups filed a major lawsuit just days after the bill passed. Their focus? A provision that removed a long-standing $200 federal tax on certain firearms, specifically silencers, short-barreled rifles, and short-barreled shotguns. That tax has been on the books since 1934 under the National Firearms Act, or NFA. The law was originally passed in response to the rise in organized crime during the Prohibition era. And for nearly a century, the NFA has been used to regulate specific types of firearms by requiring a steep tax, registration, fingerprinting, and background checks. So what changed? By removing the $200 tax, the bill effectively pulled the legal foundation out from under the NFA. At least that's what the lawsuit argues. For decades, the law's constitutionality was supported by Congress's ability to impose taxes. Now that the tax is gone, advocates are saying the rest of the law can't stand. To give you a quick idea of how that worked, if someone wanted to legally own one of these items, let's say a silencer, they had to pay the tax, register the item with the federal government, provide fingerprints, and pass a background check. It could take months. That tax wasn't just about money. It was part of the process that allowed the government to track and regulate high-risk weapons. Now imagine all of that gone. No tax, no fingerprinting, no wait period. That's what the lawsuit is aiming for. They're not just challenging the tax itself. They're asking the court to strike down the remaining restrictions entirely. And they didn't pick just any courtroom. The case was filed in the Northern District of Texas, where it was guaranteed to land with a judge appointed by President Trump. This wasn't an accident. It was a strategic move, and it shows how legal challenges are being carefully planned to land in favorable courts. If you support the Second Amendment, this might sound like a long-awaited correction. But if you're concerned about community safety, especially when it comes to unregistered or hard-to-track firearms, it raises real questions. Removing the tax may seem small, but what follows could reshape federal gun regulation entirely. And what's more, the outcome of this case could affect more than just gun laws. If the courts accept the argument that removing a tax collapses the legal structure built on top of it, that logic could spread to other laws that rely on taxation as a constitutional basis. So then, what does this all mean for the big, beautiful bill? Let's start with how it passed. It was close. In the Senate, it came down to a 51-50 vote, with Vice President Vance casting the tiebreaker. In the House, the margin was just 4 votes. That kind of razor-thin approval usually means the bill won't be the end of the fight. It's just the beginning. And we're already seeing signs of what's coming next. Environmental groups are gearing up to challenge the rollback of green energy incentives. Some education advocates are preparing to fight changes to student aid formulas. There's even early chatter that the increase in immigration enforcement funding could be challenged on procedural grounds. If that sounds like a lot, it is. And the courts are going to be busy. But hang on, it goes deeper. If judges start rewriting how we understand tax-based laws, it won't just affect this one moment. It could reshape how Congress writes laws in the future. Lawmakers may need to build in stronger legal protections. They may start writing laws in smaller pieces to avoid wide-ranging court challenges. Or they may avoid touching old tax-based policies altogether. And this is all happening fast. Some court rulings take months or even years. But here, we're seeing decisions within days of the bill becoming law. That pace shows just how urgent and contested this legislation really is. And for everyday people, especially those on fixed incomes or trying to navigate benefits, this kind of legal back and forth creates confusion. One day a benefit is active, the next day it's paused. One rule says you qualify, the next says maybe not. And all of that makes it harder to plan ahead, or even to trust that what you're being told is final. So is the bill really blocked? Sort of. Some parts are paused. Others are headed to trial. More legal fights are on the horizon. The bill passed, yes, but the courts are now deciding what survives, what changes, and what gets struck down. And if you're retired, on a fixed income, or just trying to stay informed, this is exactly the kind of thing worth paying attention to. Because it's not just about laws in Washington. It's about how those laws shape your costs, your coverage, your access. All right, now I'd like to hear from you. Do you think the courts are stepping in too aggressively here? Or are they doing what's necessary to protect people from fast-moving laws that didn't get enough public input? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if this helped make sense of what's going on, feel free to share it with someone else who might benefit. These early rulings are just the beginning, and I'll be here to walk through the rest of it with you, step by step.